The question was there any evidence of private contractors being involved in intelligence work around the Boston bombing? There is. I mean, there were all those people. I'm sure you've seen this. It's all over the internet. All these guys with the black hats and black backpacks. And as soon as the bombs went off, they immediately were sort of taking control of the scene. It's quite astonishing that a year later it has never been firmly established who those people are. We are told that some of them were in insignia for a contractor called Kraft International. We've looked at that. We're continuing to look at that. But it's quite amazing in this country that, I mean, you would think that, do you remember that video of that night they had arrested a young man who looks quite a bit like Tamerlan Tsarnaev? They had him stripped naked. They had him on the ground, and then you see them bundling him into a squad car.
Tamerlan himself has also been put from anonymous sources, say, on a CIA database of people to be monitored, which is added also to previous investigations by the FBI, so it raises further questions as to why these two were not picked up here.
Indeed, you talk about previous investigations by the FBI. It was 2 years ago that Russian officials told the FBI about Tamerlan, but apparently he still managed to slip under the radar. RT's Tom Barton, thank you.
I would like to have my word said.
Good.
Especially in the part when the guy that was taken into custody by police, then given over to FBI. You know who I'm talking about? That clip.
Yes.
A naked guy.
Yes.
I have to publicly state that I confirm and identify this person as my nephew, Tamerlan Tsarnaev.
And then later, supposedly, he dies in a shootout. I mean, the authorities were almost never questioned about this, even though it was on Fox and all the channels. You could see, if you go online, you can still watch this thing. Just type in, arrest and Boston bombing, April 15. It's amazing. How could that not be interesting to the New York Times and the Seattle Times and the Boston Globe, that they're not interested in a man who looks exactly like the terrorist was in custody? And then, and so somebody did ask him, and you know what they said? They said, oh, yeah, that was another guy. Well, who was that, please? If you arrested somebody, we ought to be able to know who was arrested. The question was, what do I think the role of those brothers was? Well, I don't know, and I never want to state with any kind of sureness, because the whole nature of what we do is to keep our minds open and keep digging. But the very fact that the FBI was so involved with him, the fact that, this letter that Grassley sent, which is in one of our articles, you have to read this, it's quite amazing. He sent a letter to Comey, the head of the FBI, asking all these questions, including, did you know who these guys were before, when you said you didn't know who they were? What was the extent of your involvement with them? And he actually says, I think you ought to know, there's a statistic which the New York Times published, that out of 22 potential plots, like where supposedly somebody was thinking of doing something or something was discussed, 22 potential terrorist plots in the United States, 14 of them involved FBI informants. Remember the guy down in Florida? He was a friend of Tamerlan Tsarnaev, and they were interrogating him, and then they shot him dead. He was unarmed. Any way you look at that, you have to ask, would he really attack an armed FBI agent? Did he? It turns out the guy had just had knee surgery. They made it out that he was this, martial arts guy. Well, maybe so, but it was a martial arts guy with knee surgery, And he told his friend he was afraid something bad was going to happen to him that night. And we'll have more on that on the website. You have to have your net cast widely. If you get everything you do from some glossy magazine put out of New York, or you watch one network and you think you're getting the truth, you're really getting a skewed perspective. And by the way, it's very interesting that centers like New York and Washington, the people are the worst informed. Do you know this? We've discovered that a lot of our best informed people are people like you out in America. A lot of them don't even have much of a formal education. They're truck drivers and they're farmers or whatever, and they're self-taught. They read books. They go home at night and they're not all watching, the Tonight Show or something. They're curious and they're reading books. Like this gentleman mentioned a book, there are lots of these different books and blogs, and they're reading this stuff and they're thinking for themselves. And we make a mistake when we look up to these gatekeepers. And people say, well, oh, you should be on Jon Stewart. But I mean, he works for a large corporation that's making money off of that stuff. And, his guests are like Bushes and Cheneys and they yuck it up. It's a great show. I told somebody the other day I was at the Daily Show. They said, finally. I said, yeah, well, I was in the audience. Eventually maybe they'll invite us on and we won't say no. But the reality is that we don't want these corporate institutions to be defining our worldview for us. And sadly, the chattering class in Washington and New York and LA and stuff, they're kind of in a little bit of a bubble. It's the Truman Show all over again, and their reality is very, very skewed. And also those people have a stake in the system, all those people who voted for Obama and, they drive a Prius and, they compost, every third Thursday and they, this and that, but, they really, they work for large corporate law firms and who are their clients, so there's that cognitive dissonance. And I think they just, they don't know how to renounce all this stuff because they're, we're all sort of hooked up to the matrix.
The matrix is a system, Neo. That system is our enemy. When you're inside, you look around, what do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, carpenters, the very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy. You have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inert, so hopelessly dependent on the system, that they will fight to protect it. Were you listening to me, Neo? Or were you looking at the woman in the red dress? I was. Look again.
I think the exciting thing, and I'd like to close with this, is that we can pull ourselves off the matrix. I think the fact that you're here is testament to that there is an uprising happening in America right now. We see it with our own site. Our traffic is zooming. More people are contacting us every day. I've been contacted in the last couple of weeks by people from the military, former military, and intelligence, and all kinds of people saying, I love what you do, and I have some stories I'd like to share with you. I've been afraid, but you're giving me encouragement to come forward and share what I know. And I think what's going to happen, I saw this. I covered East Germany, and I was there before the wall came down, and I saw people beginning to rebel. I saw people, there was a meeting at a pastor's home. Churches by the way, are very important for this stuff. There was a meeting at a pastor's home, and they were already discussing, could we change this totalitarian society? Because there were already cracks in the system. You may remember back in '89, there were all these people starting to go to the embassies in all those Eastern European countries, and so they started having these meetings. And I got on a bus, and a bunch of young people wearing ski masks got on the bus and quickly passed out leaflets and then got off. And then I was driving with a German guy, and we were taking pictures of this giant garbage plant in East Germany that was burning all the garbage for the West Germany because they didn't want the pollution. And we were taking pictures, and we stopped our car by the side of the road, and these two guys got out of this little East German car. They were wearing big ski jackets, and they said, what do you think you're doing? And my friend, who was West German, said, oh, fuck off. And I thought, oh my God, these guys are Stasi agents, we could never be heard from again. And I said, I think you're a little bit overconfident here. And I said, and he said, they have no power anymore. And I said, well, it's not, and so I said to him, listen, you translate, tell them to chill, everything's cool, everybody goes their own way and no problems. And they left because they didn't know. And a few months later, when I went to Romania, I was one of the first journalists to make it into that country when they were supposedly overthrowing Ceausescu, although it turns out he was overthrown by his own people, his own internal security people, in a fake, like everything else. But what happened there was that the same kind of thing happened. We were trying to get through the border, and at the border office, border police, they wouldn't let us go. And the reporter I was with from Spain was afraid because she'd been turned away, and she thought they'd arrest her. We went into the border station to talk to the head of it, and I said, I'm not worried. She said, why not? I said, look on the wall. What do you see? And she said, nothing. And I said, exactly. On that wall would be pictures of Mr. and Mrs. Ceausescu, and they already took the pictures down, okay? I think what's happening in this country is all of these people who are complicit are starting to take the pictures down. Thank you very much.